I want to start by going back to the start of your career, or maybe even the start of your life in fashion, and I want to ask about your earliest memories of clothes, because you said before that it came from watching an apron being folded in your dad's butcher's. Tell me about that.
I think first memory was even before that is my parents' wedding picture. My mom was wearing now I know it was a pink suit, but it was a black and white picture. That's me. I had all the time that picture of a grey skirt suit. And that was the first memory. And the second one is asking my mom what was her veil, her wedding veil, and she showed me the curtain of the living room and say, that was my veil. And as a kid, to see a piece of nylon hanging from the window, I was like, wow. The volume of the curtain was, I started to associate it to fashion, and to see that big square of white thing was like bigger than life, and unconsciously I started to have an idea that fashion was bigger than life. And
talk to me about watching that meat being cut, because obviously you're known for your cuts and your silhouettes. Yes. Is that where that came from?
It was really funny because my dad couldn't understand where that gift or that creative gift came from. And early in my career, I had an interview with Colin McDowell, and Colin said to me, butchers at the beginning of last century were considered like architects. The way you have to cut meat and not lose a piece of meat on the bone. You have to be so precise. And he said, you cut like a butcher. And you should see the face of my dad when I told him that, because everything that we fight for and against during my teens, me wanted to become a fashion designer, I had the proof that it was coming from him, and that was quite a moment in our relationship of son and father, to see that it was a legacy and not a rebellion.
I want to talk a little bit about the way you've approached fashion since, because you mentioned the clothes that your mother wore, and you mentioned, you know, the meat, and there's something quite kind of, it's very physical, and you're known for being a very physical designer. Is that something that you think can be taught, or is that something that is just so innate?
I don't think it can be taught. I think it's to the question we ask ourselves, why we're here and what's our purpose. You have to start to look at yourself in the mirror and try to understand what is your gift. And my gift was in my hands. I think my dad had the same gift, but he used it in a different, with a different medium. My gift is in my hand, it's the touch. And as much touching people and touching fabric, it talked to me. And I like the emotion that I react to when I touch. And even it starts with people, because I had more a sexual life than a fashion life to start with. I went to life and start to learn from people by absorbing one-to-one relationship with them. And from there you start to understand how fabric interact with skin. And there are some moments where you feel really rejected, and you will use fabric in a different matter than when you start to feel loved, and you feel your skin and fabric have more fluidity.
You've said before that dresses are for undressing. Yeah. For you, is fashion, is it just about sex?
It's about building relationship, and sex is part of it. I think food, sex, entertainment, fun, you know, even drugs, everything is part of sharing. Even when you don't want to share, is a way of sharing with yourself. You know, rejecting people is trying to have a one-to-one relationship with yourself.
We've talked about fabric and we've talked about flesh, but I want to talk about women, because you've spoken about how much you adore women and you think they're incredible. But what was the point where, other than your mother, you started looking at women and thinking about how they looked or how they dressed? Did that all come from your relationship with your mother, or was it the women around you? I
think I love women. They're incredible, but I don't have that kind of pedestal about. No, I think what I like about women is they are not men, and I love that. I love the fact that you have from girl to woman, you have a life that we don't have. There is a moment where you enter a period when you become a woman, and there is a private journey from the transformation of the body that men we don't. And the great thing about women, they talk so much about their problems in the press that men don't have to talk about theirs, but we have as much problem, but they're so internal. You choose from an internal transformation to be really outspoken about it, and we make people believe we don't have an internal change, but we don't talk about it. And it's quite fantastic for me, that situation of women, because what I love at the end is when a man who don't know anything, a straight man, about fashion, come to me and say, my wife or girlfriend was so beautiful, and I know at that moment I have created a situation of privacy between two people through an outfit. And that's my only interest in life, is to create these tools where two people are going to build something.
There seems to be two different approaches at play. Then there's one in which your clothes are very much for the viewer, they're for the guy or the spectator looking at what the woman is wearing, but they're also for the wearer. How do you kind of juggle that? Is it for one more than the other? It's
really funny because when the Galaxy came out, I create something bigger than me, and I think I love that. I love the fact that people don't know, especially my face, but they know my dress really well. But women start to wear the same dress and feel so unique and could gather all together in the same and say, I'm different than you. It was really weird, that dress, because I still think it's a uniform. I'm a guy who loves uniform. I'm a kid of the 80s. I was a model for Yohji Yamamoto. That's been, my mind is quite, a zip on the back is a boiler suit of glamour, a dress for me. But women start to wear it and say, I'm different than you, but you look really good, but I look really good too. That's been, it keeps a sense of independence, my clothing, and that's where I'm really proud of. I don't dictate one attitude on a woman. She can exist on the top of the dress. She make the dress hers in a way. And that's one side of it. And after, that means she will turn to a man and say, don't look at my dress, look out at me. And that's becoming, it's really fantastic how the dress disappear but exist at the same time. It's brilliant, that feeling of transformation. I think I'm quite gagging and addict on this moment of when it's magic, it's like, wow. And it disappear in a frame of a second, but you're just like, and you're trapped in it.
That's interesting, that view of womanhood. Is that what you think like true femininity is? It's that ability to transform and be confident?
Yeah. I consider a woman all the time as a mirror ball in a club, 1,000 little mirrors and shining in all direction and all the time in contradiction. And I love that because men are not in contradiction. Men will be like just one way, it's like that. Women will say, I love white, but I'm going to wear black. And don't try to change their mind, because the more powerful they are, the more stubborn they will be. I find women more stubborn than men. Men are proud, women are stubborn.
Your aesthetic now, it's obviously so signature to you. People think of those kind of fitted silhouettes that you do, but you haven't always done that kind of design.
No.
When you first started, you were doing streetwear. Tell me about, because it's People Corporation.
Yes.
Talk to me about that.
It was based really about rock, underground. Everything was around music. Everything was around people who live in London. It was the beginning of Lee McQueen. It was Katie England. It was, all that generation. We were really starting. We were nobodies, and we were going out clubbing, and we were taking drugs. Everything was together there, and that culture was coming out as the new generation of London will become cool Britannia. But everything was there, and it was rough, and it wasn't, it was still in the end of recession, but and the beginning of the new age, and and you could still find places that were really rough and you could enjoy yourself. And that's why the collection was, yeah, it was the good years of ID magazine still.
But you grew up a lot then, didn't you? Because Roland Mouret, the aesthetic is very different. But you set up Roland Mouret quite late. You were 36 when you did it. Did you just have this epiphany where you thought, I need to do chic now?
No, well, at 36, as like every British brand at the time, People Corporation was selling a lot in Asia and Japan. And you had that bankruptcy, and my business partner, Franco, as a good Italian, say, "Ooh, we don't sell anymore, we stop People Corporation." And Italians are really good for that. And I had that vision, if I didn't start, or if I didn't try to be a fashion designer, at 40, I would be a bitter bastard, bad-mouthing other people who try to do it. That's me. It was a vision of me. I have to do it. I have to do it. For what it is, I have to go for it. And the second question is, what am I going to do? Is if I put my name inside an outfit, what does it have to look like? And I start to rip all the sheets in my house because I didn't know how to call the toiling fabric calico. I didn't know what to buy. That's me. I start to use the sheets in my house, and I start to drape. And you could see my two masters really driving me between Asdin and Nyoji. It was that, I said, if I could be the bastard son of these two persons together, making a uniform sexy, it will be me. And the amount of outfit I draped, that's a good dress, but it's a Nyoji dress, and I had to throw it. I had to throw everything away to the moment where one dress came out, and I was just like, okay, that's me. That's really where I'm standing for. And because I had no training, I didn't know how to sew. Everything started by hand sewing and fabrics and deciding to show an image of my identity. And for 2 years, I refused to sell because I was not ready. And maybe that's the mistake I did, is not believing that was sellable. I think that's one moment I doubt. And I see someone like Albert Baz, he never doubted about a cut-through dress. I doubted there. I said, that's not the expectation of someone who wants to buy. And I took 2 years to learn, and everything become, the story, is meeting my business partner, losing my name. But these first 2 years, that doubt, I still question it. Did I do it because I didn't want to do it, or did I do it because I wanted to just enjoy the creative aspect of it, just to do something just for me? Even to the point I was close to bankruptcy, I had no more money, but I did it for me. I don't know. I still try to understand, but at the end, my career is my career.
You touched on it before when you mentioned, the story, losing your name, getting it back. Talk to me a bit about that moment, where you walked away from giving up your name. That's a big thing to give up.
It was quite fantastic. It was splitting up. It was divorcing someone. That's there was the pain of divorcing. But at the same time, there was the excitement of challenging me, of coming out of the box. I love to do things that nobody has done. That's, I think, if my ego is somewhere, if I'm pretentious as a French person, is I try to do things nobody has done. That's my business partner at the time did what everybody will do when you're splitting. He said to me, you will never come back. I will stop you. Something that when there is no love, there is hate. And it came out to my face. And she said, you did the best thing to me. You gave me a challenge, and I'm going to prove you that I'm going to be back. And that was the challenge. Nobody came back without their names, from Hervé Léger to a bunch of people. We're living in a world where everything changing. My clothes are so specific. It's my technique. The technique is better than the name. Let's make the technique more visible on the outside. Let's make an outfit that from the outside you read it so much, Roland Mouret, that inside you can have just the initial. And the best, as a fashion culture, the best person was Margiela, white square. You can read someone without words. Fashion is a language without words. And I went there.
So it must have been, it sounds like it was a very formative time for you then. You must have
it was, and I had a best experience when I was 27 in Paris at the time of AIDS, and you have to learn about losing. I read that book from Georges Perec, was called La Disparition, which is a book like that without the letter E inside. And you go, it's a normal story, but it's the experience of reading it. It's losing a limb, losing something that you will relate so much about when you think your life couldn't exist without it. And you go through the non-acceptance to the don't want to read that book, throw it in the room and say, not interested, coming back a few weeks after, starting again, and realizing that there is a moment, it opens in your mind, you're reading the book, and you don't try to find that letter anymore, and you find the story quite normal, to a certain level average, and you arrive at the end of it, and you understand the philosophy of that book, and that was something at 27 that keep me together on experience, and I'm still doing it the same way. I will go in a situation and say, can we do it without that? Is that can change? And I think that's how I came back with just my initials and just promised myself it's going to be better. And when I brought back my name, I was really happy, but I was really sad to say goodbye to RM, to that person without a leg. You know, I've been all the time fan of dogs with 3 legs. When you see them walking, you want to cuddle them, but at the end they're the strongest one. They're the one they don't need anybody. They can walk with 3 legs. They learn how to walk with 3 legs. And I love that person who had a bit of an amputation in my life.